I always have such a hard time narrowing down lists of favorites. This one, though, at least there was like a lot to choose from with 25, so it made it a little bit easier. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I am going to be talking about 25 of just my in general favorite sci-fi fantasy type of things. This was a video that was a Patron suggestion from Heidi, so thanks for that. And I decided to do this with, I was trying to figure out what split I would do, but since obviously I'm a book channel, I largely talk about books. I figured why not, talk about some other stuff. So I have a split here: movies, TV shows, video games, and then I did still throw in some book things too, just to talk about some of my favorite parts of some of my favorite books and things like that too. So we're still going to talk about some books, but we'll save that for the end, and we'll start with some other stuff. And I have 7 movies, 7 TV shows, 7 video games, 4 book things, I'm pretty sure, because I kept realizing I'd forgotten things. So eventually I just said, this is my list. I'm sure there are things that I'm forgetting, but this is kind of where I ended up. And let's start with movies. So I feel like I gotta, one of the really obvious ones, Lord of the Rings, though. I've always loved the Lord of the Rings movies. They're fantastic. I don't even mind. I'm generally okay with even the Hobbit ones, even though they're not nearly as good in my opinion. Still had fun with those, but just the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, the movies, they're so great. My wife and I usually try to rewatch at least once a year. We've watched the regular, we've watched the extended. It's just they're so good. I could just sit and watch those at any point. It's the kind of thing like if I just walked up somewhere and it was on, that's what I'm doing for the next few hours. So pretty evident, but there it is. We have it here. I do have some other obvious ones I feel like too, but kind of a mix. The next one, which I actually almost forgot to mention, despite how much I do really love this movie, is Galaxy Quest. And Galaxy Quest, if you're not familiar, is basically a Star Trek kind of parody movie, but it's the plot of the movie is the cast of this sort of like, Star Trek-esque TV show are at a convention, and very real aliens come thinking that they're real and are expecting them to like save them because they've seen the historical documents, which is their TV show. And so they end up actually in space dealing with aliens, and it's got a really fun cast. It's just a delightfully fun, silly, kind of campy movie, and it's a type of sci-fi that works really, really well for me. So huge fan of that movie. And then speaking again of sort of silly, campy type of sci-fi, next I got to mention Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now, I prefer the movie to the books, I will say. I'm still working my way through because I had done the first book a couple of times, and every time I tried to continue, I just never ended up wanting to continue because I like the books, but I have to very much be in the mood because it's just a level of zaniness that's almost a little bit too much for me. But I think it lends itself to the screen so well, and I really loved the movie. I've even seen like an older British TV show version that was much longer and more detailed and was also very fun. And I think it lends itself to the screen really, really well. And I absolutely love the movie. There's so many things about it, the choices they've made, and it's an amalgamation of multiple parts of the books too. It's not all just the first one, but just so much fun, so much fun. So really enjoyed that one. Then next up, we have probably also a very obvious one, but it has to be on the list: The Princess Bride. That is another one where the movie I definitely think is better than the book. I haven't reread the book in so long though. I need to actually do it. I have a nice version like the coffee table one they came out with that I got, but I mean the same guy wrote the movie, and I think even he would agree that the movie version is better. So it's just yeah, it is a classic. It's a classic movie, from the directing to the writing to the cast, everything about it. I was reminded of how much I love it and had to immediately go watch it because I recently did As You Wish, which is Carrie Ellis, his sort of memoir about the making of the movie, and it's a classic. It is gotta be one of the just greatest, maybe not even fantasy movies. It's just such a fantastic movie. Every aspect of it is just perfect, and I love it so much. And so, yeah, has to be on the list here as well. Then going down a little bit, and it's funny, I've realized for whatever reason, and maybe it's just because there's more of it, but for whatever reason, most of my movie, TV shows are sci-fi, even though I'm primarily a fantasy reader, so that's kind of fun. But we're keeping sci-fi with the next one, which is The Fifth Element. That is one of the first like sci-fi movies I got my wife to watch, and I didn't think that and this was long before we married, but I didn't think she was going to like it. She ended up loving it, and it became one of her favorites too, and well deserved because The Fifth Element is just one of those standout sci-fi movies to me because it's got the serious bits, it's got the comedy, it's got the action, it's just got so much to it, and it's such a unique singular experience from some of the acting performances, the writing, the dialogue. There's just so many pieces of it that it's just I don't think you could recapture that except for exactly the way that it was. And there's just it's so great. I again it's another one that's just a favorite, and absolutely belongs on this list. And there's not, I don't know, there's nothing that's quite that movie, and I think that's one of the reasons as well. It's just stood the test of time because I don't like to think about how old that movie actually is because it's been it's been out for a really long time, but just really fantastic movie. Then I have to go, which this counts technically as fantasy, Army of Darkness. And Army of Darkness, if you're not familiar with that one, I feel like most people should be pretty familiar with everything I'm mentioning, but that's a Sam Raimi, one of the Ash movies, and I'm a big fan of the campy kind of stuff like that too. And I love Bruce Campbell. I love a lot of the campy stuff that he's done and Sam Raimi's done. And Army of Darkness though is definitely I've always liked that one. That's my favorite out of like the the Evil Dead. And it's not technically one of the Evil Deads, but it is still at the same time. But that one is just again, it's so fun. There's some cool effects, and some of them have not aged well at all. But just the dialogue, the style of those are just absolutely fun. I could just sit and quote Army of Darkness endlessly. It is just that exact kind of campy humor again that just works so well for me and is a blast of a time. And then finally, one more movie I have to mention. And actually, I just went and rewatched this for the first time in a long time, and just remembered how much I enjoy it. And I'm waiting to watch because they're doing a new one, so I'm waiting to watch it for a little bit. But The Mummy, the original Mummy, and granted, I'm pretty sure I've seen The Mummy Returns more times actually, because when I was a kid, I had The Mummy Returns on VHS and I watched the heck out of it, but I didn't have the first one. So I'm going with the first one because it'd been a long time since I had rewatched that, and it was fairly recently I watched it. They're actually doing a new one with like original cast, which I'm so excited for because I think that should be a lot of fun, way better than the failed kind of reboots they tried to do with it. But uh, it's just there's something about it. It's again, it's such a different type of thing. It's got your cool Egyptian type of mythos and lore in it, which is always works well. I feel like, and we'll talk more about that too. It's got just a really great cast. I also big Brendan Fraser fan and love him. And just there's so many of the pieces of it, the style, the action, and the effects, which have aged actually insanely well from the original Mummy too. Is some of the stuff they do is so cool and looks a lot better than stuff that's way newer. Just a blast. And I feel like again, saying I love the Mummy is certainly not a controversial thing. It's kind of, even though I feel like it did pretty well. Obviously, it spawned a sequel and then years later a third one. It still feels like it's that cult classic. It's just so many people love it and just remember it really fondly as well. So another really fun time there. So there are my 7 movies. And then we're going to move on to TV shows. And I feel like since we were just talking about that, the next thing that makes sense to talk about is Stargate, specifically SG1. I did like Stargate Atlantis quite a lot as well. And Universe, not so much. I actually don't think I ever actually finished that one. And I know it kind of just ends anyway, but I was really excited. I know they were going to be doing new Stargate, which hopefully, I know there's all the big campaigns to get more of it, but SG1 especially just, I love that show. It did decline toward the end a little bit, but I still really loved it. And just that style, I think it was more, the SG1 was more the sort of like procedural monster of the week type thing where you go to a new planet, whereas Atlantis was more the sort of action adventure, and was less about just the new thing of the week in some ways. But just there's so much stuff, and I hits that part again. It's got the basis with Egyptian mythos and those ideas, and they expand upon that a lot and do some other things as well. But just that with the sci-fi elements, and again, just a really great cast, really great writing. It has way less camp than some other things that I've talked about, but still has the camp enough that I like and that kind of thing. And just, yeah, fantastic show. Naturally, of course, too, I have to mention Doctor Who. Now, I will say, I have seen basically no Doctor Who since after the 50th anniversary. I watched the 50th anniversary. I watched like a couple of episodes with the Doctor after that, whose name is escaping me at the moment. So it's more like the I'll make this joke just to tick people off who like actual classic Who, but like the classic modern era with. I just can't imagine somebody getting angry at that. Christopher Eccleston, and I only started watching with the new with Christopher Eccleston initially, and I've seen some of the more classic stuff too, which I quite like as well. But Eccleston and then especially David Tennant, and I liked Matt Smith too, but Eccleston and Tennant were my favorites. And so those ones I really enjoyed, and then I just sort of fell off. And it's not I've always meant to go back, but it's gotten to the point where there's just so much to catch up on that it'll take me kind of forever, and it not is always easy to stream and whatnot. So maybe at some point I need to go do more, but I still love and remember very very fondly and have rewatched multiple times those seasons, as well as some of the like the classic stuff like with Tom Baker and some of the older really good stuff there. But I do love me some Doctor Who, and yeah, I need to eventually catch up. I've been saying that for years now, and we'll have to see. It sounds like they're taking a break now, so maybe this is the time to finally get back into it and continue, because I've been curious to see what these newer iterations have done, and I just haven't gotten around to it. We go now to another really really obvious one that I feel like is almost a trope to have to mention, but I do legitimately love it so much, which is of course Firefly. And I will forever be the. I'm curious because they're doing the new animated show, and I'm not usually a huge fan of animated shows, but I like the idea of it taking place between the TV show and the movie, which means if you know, you know. Granted, it's so old, it's probably not a spoiler at this point, but we'll have all of our characters hopefully there at that point, and just getting some more Firefly in general because there's just so much to it, and the TV show is just it's so good. It really is. It did so many fantastic things. Also, one of the all-time great casts. I love Nathan Fillion. I love Alan Tudyk, especially those two are just really really great. And Summer Glau does fantastic as well as River, and just the whole cast in general does a really fantastic job throughout. But it's just it hits so many things with the really cool sci-fi elements, the fascinating world, so many great things there, and I absolutely love it. And so I'm hesitantly optimistic to see what the new show is going to bring, and I think that's probably the only way it makes sense to bring it back, because I'd love more Firefly as much as the next person, but it feels like that's going to be the best way, so I'm curious to see what they have. Now, speaking of Alan Tudyk, feels like the next thing I have to talk about, which is a newer one, but something I just loved so much. And I haven't seen the last season yet, actually, but I need to. I was waiting for it to come to streaming. But Resident Alien, which is a show that I sort of randomly just started. I hadn't heard anything about it, but I like Alan Tudyk again. So I'm like, well, let's give this a shot. And my wife and I were watching it and just both absolutely loved it. And it's a weird show. It's got a very weird cast that just works in the best way possible, and it has like it's not even close to like Twin Peaks level of weird or anything like that, but it just has the sort of it's this weird town, these weird things happening, and Alan Tudyk just absolutely selling it as the alien pretending to be a human, and he absolutely just knocks it out of the park. And then the supporting cast is also just very fun as well, and it's such a weird show. And that one I know a lot of people have obviously seen it, but that's the one you're least likely to have heard of out of anything else I'm mentioning, which are mostly much bigger shows. But is Alan Tudyk has taken over the body of a doctor and is pretending to be human because he's crash landed on Earth basically, and is trying to figure out what to do and how to get away. And he was coming there as like an advanced scout to destroy the planet, and he has to pretend to be a human and get along in this small town. And it's fantastic. It's so much fun, and I love it absolutely. Um, Next up, we have is another sci-fi one still too. Like I said, it's kind of funny that most of these end up being sci-fi. But I've mentioned before the 4400, which is it wasn't the best show or anything, but I loved it, and I've rewatched it, and I still loved it. And I know somebody told me the last time I mentioned it, which was years ago, that there are actually books that continue the story. So I need to eventually try those because I'd love to see where the story went. I just thought it was really really interesting, and that one was more just the general like a lot of the ideas I thought were really cool with what it was exploring. And so that was a show that I quite enjoyed, and it's that one is again because I feel like it's quite an older show at this point, but it is just 4,400 people that had gone missing over many many years. I think it was over like 100 years or something. All of a sudden show up in the same place, and they start exhibiting like different powers. And so you'd see people like somebody who disappeared 100 years ago and is the same age that they were. And the way they start the show, and it gets much more like, it starts with that, and it starts with a more human element. We're seeing these different people, their stories, trying to figure out how to reintegrate. But then it gets much more like sci-fi and fantasy with what you start to find out why this is happening. And I think those elements maybe lost people a little bit, but it was a really cool show. And I don't know, it's something about it that worked really well for me the first time I watched it, and it continued to work for me when I rewatched it. And I'll probably rewatch it again at some point and get to the books eventually as well. And then finally, I have to mention and show that I only actually watched for the first time a couple of years ago for some reason. I'd meant to watch it forever and never got to it, but Merlin. The BBC's Merlin is so much fun. It's more of like a campy fantasy type of show. It's not so over the top, but it'll occasionally get there. And it's a very different kind of styling of Merlin, who's younger and is a young Merlin, a young Arthur, but they did so many things, and it was such a fun show. It had a lot of heart, it had some good action and moments, a really interesting interpretation, and just so many really fun things. Like, you can find, if you ever want just to really get the weirdest possible idea of Merlin, if you look up like Merlin moments out of context, there's a lot of different videos that will just show the most like weird things happening. But really fun show again as well. And it's just, yeah, I loved that. And the ending is a little bit controversial on that one as well, but it was such a good show. Another just really, really good show. I feel like I've been talking forever already, but that's when I got to talk about 25 things. This is always going to be a little bit of a longer video, but now we've reached video games. And I am not a huge gamer, and I obviously, too, if you can hear a lot of the things I'm talking about, I don't watch a ton of TV or movies, especially newer stuff. It's just usually, if we watch anything, it's slowly getting through stuff on streaming, especially since having a kid where I have less time and I devote more of that time to reading. I don't get through as much. I play video games even less. So most of these are older things that I've played, and I don't do a whole lot of new stuff. So I'm sure there's new stuff too that I would probably love if I did, but eh. So the first thing, quite old, I have to mention Spyro the Dragon. Specifically, my all-time favorite was Spyro 3 Ripto's Rage, which was a PS1 game. And that is, I played the heck out of that, beaten every single thing, done all the stuff multiple times. I ended up years ago you could buy the three PS1 Spyro games, or maybe some were PS2, I can't remember now, but you could get them digitally, and so I did that, and they were like a little bit remastered, and so I played them later on newer console, and they're just, I don't know, there's something about it. I played, I think, some of the PS2 versions later as well. I played a GameCube version also, so I just really like Spyro. I don't know, it's something about those games, the mechanics, always a whole lot of fun, and so definitely have to mention there as my classic one. Big fan of the older Spyro games. I don't even know when the last time one. Maybe there are newer ones, but I don't honestly remember because it's the old ones that I stick with too. Now, something a little newer, sort of, Horizon Zero Dawn. And I did play the sequel. I actually only not that long ago finally finished the sequel because I just would play very, very seldom. And it took me a couple years to get through it. But the original one especially, I loved the gameplay was really fun. Exploring the world was really fun, and I do like the kind of the open world type of stuff, being able to do that. But I also loved the story behind Horizon Zero Dawn. And the second one had a pretty good story too, but it also felt like it was trying to do more to continue and like bring in more and create this bigger thing so it could keep going. Whereas the first one was more self-contained and I think worked really well. But that has remained out of like newer games my favorite thing that was just something different, something cool, and the most time over since the first one came out. The most time I spent playing any video games is definitely that Horizon Zero Dawn, and then the second one as well too, which Forbidden West. I was blanking on the name for some reason, but which was also fun. But I like the first one more, I think, overall. And even though there's some cool stuff in number two as well, but definitely very fun. Going back even older, we'll jump around a little bit, but I got to talk about Legend of Zelda, specifically the two, and I couldn't decide here because Ocarina of Time, I think, is like the epitome of great Zelda, but I also spent a ton of time playing Twilight Princess on the GameCube, and so I also loved that one as well. And I overall probably spent more time playing Twilight Princess than Ocarina of Time. I had I had like an old collector's edition that had the Zeldas up through Majora's Mask on a one GameCube disc, and so I played a lot on there here, two on GameCube mostly, and not actually on N64, just because the method I have it is so hard to track down those older consoles. But I want to at some point. I don't know if even if I just end up doing it on like getting an emulator or something. I'd love to play through again because it's been many years since I played any. But just this again, really fun, cool lore, cool stuff, and just there's something about the Legend of Zelda games that are just an absolute blast to play. And so, big fan of those as well. Then we have a couple of, I say newer, they're not particularly new, but you know what I mean here as well. Um, I will call out as well that I suppose you could maybe make the argument, but if Uncharted counts, because there are some fantasy elements, that is the other of my like favorite series, but I didn't put it here because it's not like super sci-fi fantasy. It's more just like action adventure, but you did have some things that probably count. So I will put that as like the biggest honorable mention because I played all four of the like mainline games. Absolutely loved them. Played most of them multiple times. But anyway, now what we're talking about. So then the next ones I'll talk about are The Last of Us, which I've only played the first one. Actually, I never got around to playing past that, but I loved that game. I played that one through when I was in college and also working multiple jobs, and so I'd only play it like very late at night. It was dark and it was atmospheric, and so like my experience of playing the game was such a blast as well. I still haven't seen the show either. I do want to watch the show for that one as well, but again, I'm really slow to get to things. But that was just, yeah, that whole game was, the storyline was fantastic, the gameplay was fun, and also just really alluded itself well to getting you pulled in. And then Shadow of Mordor. And I did play the second one a little bit and was not nearly a fan of the second one in comparison. Even though the first one, like, it got really repetitive after a while, but I just played the heck out of it for whatever reason. But Shadow of Mordor was just kind of fun as a weird sort of open world-ish Lord of the Rings game where you go in and, you know, you can recruit different you can go kill different orc captains, and then eventually you can recruit them, and you have some storyline stuff going on as well too. And I liked the gameplay. I liked it's Lord of the Rings stuff, so it's just fun, and none of it's like canon stuff by any means, but it was just cool. It was a cool use of the source material, and I spent a lot of time playing Shadow of Mordor and had a lot of fun with it as well. So there's some cool games. And then the other sort of wild card, I have Super Mario 64, which I'm definitely counting as fantasy. And Super Mario 64, the number of times I have played through that game, it's just great. It's also like that game, you can do so much with it. And granted, once you've done it multiple times, like I can sit now and get through like, you know, 2/3 of the game probably in a few hours because you know what you're doing, you get used to it. But so many hours I spent on that game, just an absolute blast. That's the one where it's the 64 version, obviously, but where you jump through the paintings, go to the different worlds, and it's still fun. It still holds up as a fantastic game today. I still have it for my N64, and it's great. I love it. Love it so much. It is just an absolute blast. And then the last thing I'll mention, and I've ended up, I still occasionally will do on like an emulator or something, but the Gen 3 Pokemon games for Game Boy Advance. I absolutely love all of them, whether it's the Ruby Sapphire or the Leaf Green Fire Red. I played those, and I've never really gotten into any of like the newer ones, probably because I've never had any of those systems, like you know the DS or the Switch or any other type of stuff. And God knows I don't need to because I don't have time to add more stuff. But I love the Gen 3 games for whatever reason. They're the ones I've played and played over and over again. Also likely because that was the first like Game Boy I had was a Game Boy Advance, and I had I think Pokemon Ruby for it. I do like emulators though because you can speed up the gameplay, and I do not think I could sit through one of those at normal speed at this point anymore. But fun as well too. So that finishes up video games, and now despite the fact that we've already been going for a really long time, we got to talk about book stuff because you know I'm a book channel, so some of my favorite book things. These are also, none of these are in any particular order. It's just the order I wrote them down on my pad here. But the first one we're going to talk about is from Ships of Merrier, which is the second book in Wars of Light and Shadow, and the one I really fell in love with. And the plotline specifically, one of the main characters, Arathon, when he is just off in this small town and he is building a ship, Ships Merrier, yeah. And it is just, all of that part is just, I loved it so much. It's where I really fell in love with the series. And so even though there's so many huge, more epic and amazing things that happen in that series overall, just the storyline of him just building his sloop and going out and all the things around that, everything that happens there. I love that plot line so much. And it's again, I was Wars of Light and Shadow ended up becoming my favorite all time series, and I wasn't 100% sold after the first book because I quite enjoyed it, but it took a while for me to fully like get into it, know what I was getting into. Book two, I kind of had my expectations there. I'm like, okay, I've done this first book, I kind of know what to expect, and I just ended up falling in love. So that will always, that book in general, but especially that plotline will always hold a very special place for me. I have to mention as well too with Wheel of Time, which Wheel of Time was the series I thought would never be topped as my favorite, but my favorite for most of my life. You know, 2/3 of my life that I've been reading Wheel of Time. It has been my favorite, and the thing there too, it's not even like the biggest thing, but my favorite character from Wheel of Time I've talked about many times is Matt, and it's from the late book storylines, and so it's people will always read the early books and are like, why is everybody's favorite character Matt? Because it's more much later, but in my favorite book there as well, which is Knife of Dreams, is Matt, and I'm saying this as vaguely as possible, but Matt meeting back up with the band, and I absolutely love that. It kind of is really, it's an inciting incident of we're moving forward, and it's coming up. That was the book where things really started to jump in, and I think that's so much of it I love is all of the stuff we get with that character, but especially it's that moment meeting up, just kind of like jumping back into place, and so I quite enjoyed that part as well. And then the last two, I don't think will really surprise anybody if you've seen me talk as well too. With, and I know they should be surprising, but I've mentioned for so many years is one of my favorite all time plot lines being the Chain of Dogs from Dead House Gates, the second book of Malazan, Book of the Fallen. And Malazan has so many just fantastic different plot lines and just things that happen like in individual book or over multiple books that are big enough to be their own climax to an entire series, probably. The Chain of Dogs is one of them. And it's just, it's a large part of the second book, and it's one of those things too. If you've read it, you've read it, and not everybody loves it as much as I do by any means. But it's just it's such a great plotline. You have action, you have a lot of drama. It's heartbreaking moments, all kinds of just stuff happening with it. And I just it's still one I haven't actually read. It's been over 10 years at this point since I read Malice, and that one sticks in my head, and I remember it like I read it yesterday, and it's just never really left me. And that's how you know something is truly like a favorite thing. It's just it sticks with you that much. And then finally, I have to mention, which I've talked about plenty of times before, but the first like 200 pages of Fool's Errand, which is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy from Robin Hobb. It's the second Fitz trilogy, and it is my favorite of the series, and it's my ending for the series is the Tawny Man trilogy. And just the first 200 pages is kind of you'd think I like cozy more because I feel like I talked about Ships of Merrier, that plotline and this plotline both probably fit somewhere in there, even though I'm not a huge fan overall. But just that scene, it's you're catching up with some characters. You're just sort of living with them as this kind of slice of life, just beautiful moments you get, and it's one of my favorite things. And every time I think about it, it just makes me warm inside. You know, it's another thing that's just an absolute favorite for me as well. So there you have it. There's me trying not to talk for an hour about every item, but 25 of my favorite sci-fi fantasy things. So let me know your thoughts, any of the stuff that I mentioned, or if there's some stuff that really sticks out as some of your favorites as well. You can do all 25 in the comments if you want to. More power to you. But if it's a couple, also definitely let me know. But that is it for this one. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description as always for the Patreon if you want to support what I do and or suggest videos like this as well. And of course, the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books or other stuff that I talked about here, books, anything really, whatever. It's a lot of fun. We'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.